Why you secretly hate guests. Carl Jung original. You may think of yourself as a welcoming person, raised to show kindness to strangers. You've cooked for others, set up chairs, opened your door many times. And yet, whenever a knock comes and someone steps inside, a strange tightening rises in your chest. You ask yourself, do I actually dislike guests? Why do I feel uneasy when I should be glad to see them? This uneasiness carries an ancient weight. Letting someone into your home is not just offering food or a chair. The home is more than walls and a roof. It is a symbol of your inner world, the place where your fragile order and sense of safety live. A guest enters this protected space, and with their presence, they awaken something deep within you. Humanity's long struggle with the stranger at the gate. Myths tell us the guest was always both gift and danger. In Homer's Odyssey, to welcome a stranger was sacred, but it also meant risking deceit, invasion, or harm. To refuse them, however, was to offend the gods. That same contradiction remains alive in us. We want to appear generous, moral, and humane, yet our instincts warn us that every outsider carries a shadow that might disrupt our world. The unconscious never bows to politeness. It knows that every guest is both Hermes, the messenger of the gods, and the trickster who steals peace. What unsettles you is how their presence forces you to adjust your carefully balanced mask, the persona you wear in daily life. Alone, your world follows your rhythm. Your books lie where you left them. Your breath sets the pace. Your silence belongs to you. A guest changes all that. Suddenly you must smile when you don't feel like it, listen when you want silence, share space when you long for solitude. Resentment grows because their presence threatens the freedom of your ego. But there is something deeper still. Every guest is a mirror. They notice the dust in the corners, the weariness in your eyes, the cracks in your laughter. They reflect back to you not only what you want to show, but also what you try to hide. What you resist in them is what you resist in yourself. Dreams have long taught us that a house represents the self. The cellar is the unconscious, the attic the mind, the bedroom intimacy, the kitchen transformation. When a stranger enters your dream house, it means you are meeting a part of yourself you haven't yet accepted. So too in waking life, the guest at your table is like a dream figure. Their presence unsettles you because they awaken forgotten, unloved parts of your own being. And so, the tension you feel is not truly with them, it is with yourself. We build doors, locks, and routines to protect our space. Territory is nothing less than the ego drawn outward into walls and fences. To cross that boundary without invitation feels like a violation of the self. Yet, even when we invite someone in, there is a subtle resistance, a hidden tension. The ego resents being made permeable. On the surface, we want to appear generous and open-hearted. But beneath the surface, we guard our space as fiercely as wolves guard their den. This contradiction is not a personal weakness. It is an ancient inheritance, a pattern older than morality itself. The secret dislike of guests is an echo of humanity's long memory of defending the tribe's fire from intruders. Think of the threshold. Every guest stands on that symbolic line between two worlds. Inside and outside, safety and danger, the known and the unknown. To open the door is to let the unknown step into your carefully ordered space. Myths remind us that demons or vampires cannot cross a threshold unless invited. Why? Because the psyche senses that to welcome a stranger is to let the unconscious seep into consciousness. Hospitality is therefore never simple. It is both sacred and perilous. To host another is to undergo a kind of initiation into the mystery of the other. Yet this initiation is often resisted, because we prefer stability over transformation. The guest is always more than just a neighbor, friend, or relative. They represent the not me, the shadow, the part of ourselves we have not yet welcomed. The deeper self, the archetype of wholeness, seeks to integrate opposites. But the ego resists, preferring sovereignty and control. This resistance is felt as hostility. Still, if we could look with the eyes of the deeper self, we would recognize the guest as a messenger of wholeness, even when their presence irritates us. In dreams, this truth appears as unexpected visitors who barge in uninvited. These dream figures symbolize unconscious material pressing against the walls of consciousness. When you scramble in a dream to hide your disarray before guests, It is your soul showing you how fragile the mask of the persona truly is. And this same drama unfolds in waking life. When an unexpected visitor enters your home, you feel exposed. Your routine is disrupted. Your mask stiffens. This is why resentment rises. It is not only about the guests themselves, but about the deeper truth they represent. The unconscious will not remain shut out forever. If we barricade ourselves too tightly, it will force its way in disguised as a visitor. This tension becomes sharper in modern life. We long for connection, yet we recoil from contact. We complain of loneliness, yet we resent intrusion. The paradox reflects the dual structure of the psyche, the need for solitude and the need for communion. Both are archetypal. Both must be honored. When one dominates, resentment grows. If you sacrifice too much solitude for social demands, your soul revolts against constant company. If you hide too deeply in solitude, then even a small intrusion feels unbearable. Either way, the unconscious used resentment to warn you. Balance has been lost. The banquet table is one of the most powerful symbols of this paradox. In myth, the feast is where strangers are welcomed, alliances are formed, betrayals unfold. To eat together is sacred communion, but also risk. Food is life itself, and to share it stirs ancient fears of scarcity. Even in a world of full refrigerators, the old instincts whisper. A guest eating your bread may stir a buried anxiety. They are taking my life force. There won't be enough for me. These are not rational fears, but they are real in the body. They echo memories of famine, invasion, and survival struggles carried by our ancestors. Yet inside this discomfort lies the possibility of transformation. The guest is a shadow figure, both dangerous and precious. The shadow always hides treasure as well as poison. To welcome a guest consciously is to practice alchemy, breaking down the rigid walls of the ego so something new can be created. The irritation you feel is like the fire of transformation, what alchemists called nigredo, the blackening, the dark stage before gold emerges. The guest is your nigredo. Without it, there is no wholeness. If you listen carefully to your resentment, it reveals its language. I fear exposure. I fear contamination. I fear being devoured. I fear losing control. These are not small social worries. They are primal, archetypal fears. They reveal the deepest human struggle, balancing self and other, solitude and communion, order and chaos. To secretly hate guests is to wrestle with this very mystery of being human. If you deny the hatred, it festers in the shadow, poisoning your hospitality with passive aggression. But if you confront it, you may discover in it a path to self-knowledge. So when the doorbell rings and you feel that familiar tightening in your chest, don't just shame yourself for being inhospitable. Instead, pause and ask, what part of myself is knocking at the door in this person's form? What shadow are they carrying for me? What old fear is being stirred awake? When seen this way, the guest becomes more than an inconvenience. They become a mirror, a messenger, even a teacher. Your resentment becomes a symbol, and your home is no longer just a shelter, but a temple where transformation quietly unfolds. The dreamer feels overwhelmed, as if pressed down by too many foreign presences. This sense of being flooded by others is the psyche's commentary on the burden of society itself. To live consciously is to host countless energies within. Each of us carries a child, a lover, a warrior, a sage, a fool. Each inner figure demands attention, and each one disrupts the fragile order the ego tries to maintain. When the dream shows faceless guests crowding into the house, it is showing the magnitude of this demand. Perhaps this is why in waking life, so many people secretly dislike having visitors. Guests are a reminder of the infinite inner visitors we already carry, often against our will. But hatred of guests is not evil. It is energy. Hatred, when acknowledged honestly, is the fire with which the ego protects its boundaries. Without this defensive energy, the self would dissolve into the collective mass, losing all individuality. A certain degree of hostility is therefore healthy. It preserves the sanctity of the soul's inner space. Trouble arises only when the hatred is denied or repressed. Then it leaks out in indirect ways: passive aggression, resentment, or even self-loathing. The task is not to eliminate hatred, but to transform it. What feels like hostility can be reshaped into discernment. The wisdom to know when to open your door and when to keep it closed. Think of the hearth, the sacred fire at the center of the home. To let someone sit by your hearth is no small act. It is to share your soul's warmth. This is why hospitality always feels charged with ambivalence. On one hand, it is generous. On the other, it can feel as though the guest sips from your very lifeblood. Resentment arises because you know instinctively that such sharing costs you something. And yet, in that cost lies the mystery of sacrifice. To give away a part of your essence is to expand yourself. The ego resists, the unconscious resents, but the deeper self whispers that sacrifice is the path to wholeness. Each guest is therefore a test. Can your ego bear the diminishment that allows the larger self to grow? Guests also disturb time, which is perhaps even more sacred than space. You live by your own rhythm, your cycles of activity and rest. But when a guest arrives, your rhythm is broken. You must speak when you would rather be silent, eat when you would rather fast, stay awake when you would rather sleep. The resentment you feel is not trivial. It is the soul's protest against violation of its inner order. Time is the very structure of psychic unfolding. To have it disrupted feels almost like an assault. Yet disruption can also be an initiation. The guest interrupts routine, creating a break in the everyday pattern. This break can become sacred time, a kairos in which new possibilities are born. The ego may protest, but the self rejoices. I once knew a woman who dreamed often of unwelcome guests. Her house was filled with drunken relatives who would not leave. Strangers lay in her bed, forcing her to sleep on the floor. In her waking life, she was polite, agreeable, and endlessly accommodating. Yet her dreams revealed the truth. She secretly resented these intrusions. By repressing her hostility, she had forced it into the unconscious, where it returned in grotesque dream images. Only when she admitted her hatred and began to set real boundaries did her waking relationships improve. The unwanted dream guests no longer tormented her, for she had listened to the symbolic message they carried. The figure of the guest also echoes something deeper: death itself. In many traditions, death is imagined as a visitor, a stranger who knocks at the door, enters uninvited, and takes a seat at your table whether you welcome him or not. Every actual guest is therefore a faint reminder of mortality. The disruption of order they bring foreshadows the final disruption, when death overturns the entire pattern of life. Perhaps this is why even a casual visit can awaken such hidden irritation. To resent the guest is, unconsciously, to resent impermanence. Every knock at the door whispers of the inevitable guest who one day will come for us all. To live with guests, then, is to rehearse letting go, to practice surrender. On a personal level, guests awaken old childhood wounds. Many carry within them an inner child who longed for privacy but was denied it. Perhaps you were forced to smile when you felt sorrow, to share when you wanted to keep, to entertain adults when you wanted solitude. In such cases, every new visitor today reawakens the old injury. The hatred you feel is not just about the person at the door. It is the protest of the wounded child, an echo of the voice that was once silenced. This explains why the resentment often feels disproportionate. It is not the present alone that disturbs you. It is the flood of the past rushing into the present moment. On an archetypal level, the guest represents unconscious material intruding into consciousness. The psyche is like a house with many rooms. Some rooms are locked, their lights extinguished, yet the unconscious refuses to remain locked away. It sends up figures from the cellar or down from the attic. They appear in dreams, in moods, in sudden thoughts, or as projections on others. The guest who steps into your home is not merely themselves. They are also a mirror of your own hidden parts. To hate them is to hate the reminder of what you repress. Myth and story have always carried this wisdom. In Sleeping Beauty, the uninvited 13th fairy crashes the banquet and brings a curse. This is the image of the rejected psychic content. What is excluded will return in destructive form. The hated guest is precisely the one who carries the power of initiation. Their curse is the gift that forces growth. Sometimes the guest embodies the shadow. The traits you cannot admit belong to you. The loud, arrogant, or greedy visitor may disgust you, but perhaps they represent your own repressed boldness or appetite. Hatred in such cases is projection. What you condemn in them is what you cannot accept in yourself. Other times the guest embodies anima or animus, the inner opposite-sexed figure who carries your unlived potential. Their presence may awaken hidden desire or attraction, which the ego resists because it threatens upheaval. The irritation you feel may mask a deeper recognition. This person carries something you need to integrate. Guests also carry the weight of the collective. Every visitor brings society with them, its expectations, its rules, its invisible demand to be sociable, polite, and accommodating. For many, this feels suffocating. Thus, the hatred of guests can also be rebellion against the pressure of conformity, against the endless appetite of the collective that wants you to play a role. The guest embodies the demand to wear the mask of persona, to betray authenticity for acceptance. The hatred whispers, "I do not wish to perform anymore." Yet transformation always requires meeting what is foreign. The alchemists spoke of conjunctio, the sacred union of opposites. The guest, as stranger, is the foreign element that can spark change. The irritation they provoke is the fire under the alchemical vessel. Without this fire, no transformation would take place. What we call hatred is often the very heat that makes growth possible. Dreams of strangers living in one's house reveal the same truth. These figures are not invaders, but forgotten parts of the soul demanding recognition. At first, they inspire fear and resentment. Why are they here? But the deeper truth is that the house always belonged to them too. Wholeness means acknowledging these hidden inhabitants. And this is the final paradox. To secretly hate guests is to secretly resist wholeness, for wholeness is never comfortable. It is not the ego's fantasy of perfect solitude and order. It is the messy, demanding reality of opening to what is foreign. To welcome guests, both outer and inner, is to walk the path of individuation. The discomfort you feel is the sign that transformation is real. Every guest wounds you, but in the wound lies the medicine. Life is often compared to a feast, a great banquet where each of us is invited to discover the fullness of who we are. But this banquet is not open to all without condition. To enter, one must wear the right garment, the garment of awareness. If you arrive carelessly, without consciousness, you will not truly be able to take part. This image reminds us that not every thought, impulse, or person who enters our lives should be received blindly. Discernment is required. To integrate the unconscious does not mean letting every hidden force in you roam free. It means testing them, naming them, and bringing them into light. In the same way, welcoming a guest in life does not mean handing them your soul. It means engaging with them consciously, asking what their presence awakens in you, what archetype or lesson they carry. For every guest is not only an outsider, but also a mirror of something within yourself. When you feel that sudden resistance towards someone, that quiet dislike, that secret wish that they would leave, it does not mean you are cruel or inhospitable. It means the psyche is speaking. Something inside you fears expansion. Something clings to order and safety. The guest, by simply arriving, awakens this resistance. And this is their gift. If you can hold the discomfort without collapsing into hostility or escaping into shallow politeness, you will grow. The unwanted guest becomes an initiator, drawing you into the deeper chambers of your being. Even the feeling of hatred, though painful, is part of this initiation. It burns, yes, but it also illuminates. At the deepest level, the guest is not only a figure of daily life or a dream character. They can be the archetype of the divine visitor, the messenger of the highest within you. This is why ancient traditions warn us to treat strangers with reverence. Angels are said to appear in disguise. The gods of Olympus wandered the earth as beggars, and Christ himself declared that what you do to the least of people, you do to him. The uneasiness or irritation you feel may not only be about the person themselves. It may be fear of the sacred. For the sacred never comes tame or manageable. It overturns illusions, disturbs comfort, and demands truth. This is why you fear the guest. They threaten your carefully constructed identity. They remind you that you are not finished, not yet whole. Yet beneath this fear is a deeper longing. Every irritation conceals the cry of the soul. Let me grow. Let me expand. Let me become whole. The self often sends guests, both in life and in dreams, as catalysts for growth. Each encounter creates friction between the ego, which wants safety and stasis, and the self, which demands transformation. Consider the myth of Philemon and Baucis, the poor couple who welcomed strangers, only to discover they were gods. Their hospitality brought blessing and revealed divinity. The lesson is clear. The guest is never only human. They may carry the archetype of the divine. To receive them consciously is to receive God within yourself. To resist them, even to hate them, also has meaning. Hatred shows you where your ego is clutching most desperately to control. To admit, I secretly hate guests, is to confess, I secretly resist my own wholeness. And this is not a shameful thing, it is an honest beginning. In dreams, the guest often appears in liminal spaces, attics, basements, corridors, those places where hidden or repressed parts of the psyche live. Sometimes the guest appears as an intruder, sometimes as a wanderer, sometimes as a mysterious guide. If you follow them, they lead you into new rooms of your own being, into forgotten treasures and hidden staircases. What the ego rejects in waking life often turns out to be the very key to growth. The psyche insists on its wholeness, and so the guest appears again and again until you can no longer ignore them. We must also remember, individuation, the path to wholeness, is never solitary. Yes, solitude is important, but it is through others that our shadows are revealed, our masks tested, our limits confronted. The guest becomes the crucible where your false persona cracks, the mirror that reflects your shadow, the fire that humbles your ego. Without such encounters, you would remain trapped in self-deception. You may hate the guest, but you also secretly need them. There is also the dimension of the unlived life. Every guest you meet carries a path you did not take, a possibility you left behind. An artist awakens the ghost of your own abandoned creativity. A calm person stirs your restlessness. A daring soul reminds you of your caution. Their very presence exposes the roads you did not walk, the sacrifices you made, the selves you left unrealized. This is painful, because it awakens grief for what might have been. Yet this grief is part of individuation too, for becoming whole requires that you face your unlived life and reclaim its energy. The irritation you feel is the ache of incompleteness. So when you say you secretly hate guests, you are not only describing a social discomfort, you are touching something universal and archetypal. You are admitting that you resist intrusion, that you resent losing control, that you fear your shadow, that you ache under the weight of unlived potential. This is the human condition. There is no shame in it. What matters is not to deny the hatred, but to understand it, to hold it in awareness, to seek its symbolic meaning. Hatred can then become awareness. Awareness can become compassion, and compassion can lead to wholeness. The guest does not cease to be difficult, but they cease to be merely irritating. They become a messenger, a teacher, a guide. So next time someone knocks at your door and you feel that tightening in your chest, do not condemn yourself. Instead ask, what part of me is being awakened? What archetype is being stirred? What unlived life is standing before me? With this attitude, even hatred becomes meaningful. You begin to see that the guest is never only the guest. They are Hermes the messenger, death the inevitable, the anima, the self. To welcome them consciously is to welcome the fullness of life itself. To reject them unconsciously is to remain trapped in illusion. This is the paradox. You secretly hate guests because you secretly fear yourself. Yet every guest carries a key to yourself. If you can endure the discomfort and stay present, then every guest becomes a sacrament. Hospitality becomes more than politeness. It becomes initiation. The guest disturbs your order, but in doing so, they awaken your soul. Wholeness is not achieved by staying safe in solitude, but by opening the door again and again, even when you would rather keep it shut. For the self demands expansion and will not rest until all guests are received. Yes, you will still feel the secret hatred, but now you know it is not failure. It is the fire of transformation. It is the sign that the self is alive within you. Do not suppress it. Let it burn. Let it illuminate. For in the end, every guest is your teacher, and every act of true hospitality, even when it hurts, brings you closer to the mystery of your wholeness.